Listen to the Vibes, hosted by Coyote Knight. Listen in for some positivity and good times. The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. This is our platform where we like to bring people on that have a success story, that have overcome certain things in their lives, and they have interesting stories that I feel to be beneficial to you. And today's guest, he is no exception to that rule. His name is Adam Mendler, and he's got a great story to tell. And I just want to start off saying, welcome to the show.
Kyle, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and it's an honor to be able to spend this time with you and with your audience.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We were very excited when you agreed to be on the show.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Well, I have gone over his bio, and he's got a great list of things on here, and I'm not sure where to start at, but first of all, let's hear about you, like where you grew up and those kind of things.
I love talking about my childhood. I had a great childhood growing up in a place called Tarzana. So Tarzana, California is a suburb of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I grew up on a street called Velos Avenue. And that might sound familiar to listeners because my company is the Velos Group, and I started it with my brother, and we named it after Velos Avenue.
Oh, cool.
And growing up in Tarzana, growing up on Velos Avenue, was really formative to developing my values, developing my worldview, developing the way that I approach business and really try to approach life.
And I understand that you've actually made 3 different businesses successful.
So we started 3 different businesses in 3 different industries, one being an office furniture company called Beverly Hills Chairs. Beverly Hills Chairs is the leading seller in the country of refurbished Herman Miller Aeron chairs, Herman Miller Mira chairs, steel case loop chairs. So any listeners out there who are working from home in this coronavirus moment and trying to figure out, how do I get a really, really good office chair without having to pay over $1,000 for it, are discovering us, and they're finding chairs from Beverly Hills Chairs. That's one of our companies.
Okay.
Another company is called Custom Tobacco. You go to customtobacco.com. You can create your own fully customized private label cigar in real time.
Oh, no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then third business is called Velos Solutions, which is a software development and technology consulting company. We work with early stage to middle market companies. We've worked with some nonprofits as well over the years. And we do custom software development.
Okay, so just about anything that is needed for whatever business, y'all are able to create that.
Yeah, and we tend to get involved in projects that tend to be on the more sophisticated side. Oftentimes, companies will have incumbent software development firms that aren't necessarily capable of working at the level that they need, and they'll then turn to us, and we love that. Kyle, I don't know if you're a baseball fan at all. I know that you told me off air that you spent some time in Houston. The Astros are certainly not the most popular team in baseball these days.
No,
I'm an Angels fan.
Unfortunately. You're an Angels fan?
And I'm a huge Angels fan, and I've been to many, many Angels-Astros games over the years and have watched the Astros take a beating to my Angels.
Well, I have to confess, I'm a Rangers fan myself.
Are you okay? We've done pretty well against the Rangers over the last few years.
So you weren't supposed to say that. Now I have to cut you off.
Actually, I went to a couple of Angels-Rangers games last year. So I miss being able to go to the park, as I'm sure Kyle, you do, and I'm sure anyone listening in who's a baseball fan.
Well, back in Houston, I only got to go to two different Astros games, and ironically, both of them were against Cincinnati.
Huh.
But we did beat them.
So it was back when the Astros were in the National League.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, before they made a switch.
I'd be happy to have the Astros go back to the National League. Give them back.
So, along this journey that you've made creating these businesses, I'm sure you've come across a lot of people, and a lot of people have great advice. I mean, can you tell me what you've learned from these people?
Yeah, Kyle, we could spend the entire episode just on that. So that's really the focus of my show, 30-Minute Mentors, where I go one-on-one with the most successful people in America, leading founders and CEOs, so people who have started or lead household name companies. I had the CEO of Gold's Gym on there, who's based in Texas. I had the CEO of Deloitte Consulting, the founder of Kayak, the founder of FanDuel, talking about sports. I've also had some military leaders on there. Admiral Stavrid, retired four-star admiral. The episode that was released today was with a retired General Reynold Hoover. I've also had some celebrities and athletes on there. Rob Lowe is on the podcast. Suzanne Sommerville on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
So it's just been a fun experience. And every episode, I personally learn new things. I'm sure listeners are learning lots of new things. My goal is for anyone tuning in to be able to take away practical, actionable tips that can help you thrive in your lives, in your careers, can help you become more successful personally, more successful professionally. And I know in my own business and in my own life, after every interview, I'm walking away with things that are really valuable to me.
Oh, yeah. That's what I appreciate about Listen to the Vibes, because I get people that they have such a take on life and success and balance that I take something new every time I talk to someone.
Hopefully that will be true today. I'm going to try not to disappoint.
I have no doubts. And so also read you had mentioned something in your bio about the post Me Too's. Can you explain that to me?
Well, the world has changed a lot because of the coronavirus crisis. And
right.
A lot of the interviews I've been doing recently have been on how leaders can lead in today's landscape post-corona. But pre-corona, the big story was Me Too. And I think that all leaders, corona, non-corona, need to recognize that leadership and leading in today's landscape has changed, will change, continues to change. And when you bring up Me Too, that's a great example of an area in which any and every leader needs to recognize that leadership isn't just about you. In fact, it isn't about you. It's about the people around you. It's about each and every person in your organization. It's about every person on your team and really every stakeholder. And what Me Too really brought out, what Me Too really demonstrated, is the importance of leaders having two things. Number one, having good intentions. I think leaders need to really appreciate the importance of servant leadership. They need to really appreciate the importance of empowering others and treating others not necessarily the way that they want to be treated, but the way, not, and this is kind of a complex topic, so it's not necessarily the way that the leader wants to be treated, but the way that the employee wants to be treated. And having good intentions is not good enough. So yes, it's important to have good intentions, and that's a good starting point. But that isn't good enough. You need to also have the proper actions, because not only do you need to come from a good place, but you need to act accordingly. And leaders need to be mindful at all times of what they're doing and how they're treating everyone around them. So, in a nutshell, don't just think about, does this feel right? Does this feel good? Am I acting out of a good place? You should. That's a good starting point. But that isn't the entire conversation. You need to really think about it from the perspective of the person you're interacting with. You need to really think through things from the other person's shoes. Act accordingly.
If I can interrupt you for a moment, I was a supervisor in a city utility company, and I became a supervisor. But one of the biggest things that I learned while doing that was, in order to be a really good leader, I had to be a good follower as well. And also to be able to not let my pride get in the way and be able to listen to other people's advice. Now, what's your take on that?
Couldn't agree with you more, Kyle. I think that that's wisdom that anyone and everyone listening should truly internalize. None of us have all the answers.
When I was coming up, and of course, I started out as a grunt in the hole, and then I made equipment operator, a crew leader, and then on to being a supervisor. And along that journey, I would take the time to show people all the things that I knew to the best that I could do. And yet there was others that were in the same positions as I was that refused to do it. It's like they were afraid somebody was going to take their job or something like that. My philosophy was, is if I can teach you what I know, and then something better comes along that I can step into, I have somebody to fall right into place where I just left.
I love that. And Kyle, I think you're demonstrating to your listeners why you're a person worth listening to. Because at the end of the day, leadership is not about you, it's about the people around you. And if you're approaching a problem from the perspective of, how does this benefit me personally? If you approach any situation with that mindset, you're not situated to be a leader.
True.
Get out of the way. Now, there are people who can be very successful in life who are not necessarily leaders. Not everyone has to be in a leadership role. We were talking a little bit about baseball earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all of the great athletes who are great individual contributors. On a basketball team, you could be a great scorer, and you're not necessarily the leader of that team. You could score the most points, you could get the most rebounds. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the leader in the locker room or the leader on the floor. So if you're not the leader, that's fine. But if you are going to lead, make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure that you're leading from the right place. Make sure that your heart is in the right place, and make sure that your actions reflect.
Well, it's kind of like planting that seed. A lot of times people just think of the seed itself, but when time goes on, you see a forest, and then that's beneficial to you and to everyone around you. If that's a good analogy.
Absolutely, Kyle. Really important to look forward. Really important to try to think about where things are going, not necessarily where things are at this moment in time, although where things are at this moment in time are important. It's equally important, if not more important, to look forward, to look into the future to the extent you can, and to try to the best of your ability to set things up in a way that will position you for success in the short term and in the long term. So, Kyle, I think your analogy is right on the money.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, you also mentioned in your bio about working with millennials, the Generation Z, and which demographic seems to be the hardest to work with?
It's a question that I think everyone will answer differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you ask my dad, he'll have one answer. If you ask, if you ask someone who's 19, he or she might have a different answer. So if you ask someone who works for my dad, they'll have a different answer. So I think it really kind of depends on where you're sitting at the table. I don't really find any one particular generation any easier or any more difficult to work with than any other generation. What I think matters is understanding that we each come to the table shaped by different experiences. So just taking Generation Z, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Generation Z is way more technology savvy than any generation we've had in the history of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle, you and I didn't grow up with the level of digital fluency that members of Generation Z have. So we need to understand that. We need to recognize that. It shapes the way that they think. It shapes the way that they act. That's just one of however many examples I can give you. And I think leaders need to understand that we're each byproducts of our experiences. We're each byproducts of how we got here. And rather than look at a particular group of people and say, these people are hard to deal with, these people are hard to manage, I think we should look at any and every group and say, what can these people bring to the table? And how can I best tap into the potential? And how can I best tap into what each and every one of these individuals can bring to my team and to my organization?
Gotcha. Now, I'm a Gen Xer myself.
Okay.
So if that tells you how old I am. Let's put it this way. When video games first came out, I think Pong was the first game I ever played.
Sure.
I think I was 10 when the first Atari home set came out.
Okay.
So we had a button and a joystick. And now my grandkids, my 4-year-old grandson, can sit there with one of these controllers that has umpteen million buttons on it and still be able to do that. And they say, Pawpaw, play with me, and I'm still running into the wall. Don't have no idea what I'm doing. So, but I want to learn. I honestly want to learn. I used to have that mindset of, you know what, this is beyond me. We did just fine without it, but let's face it, this world, you have to learn if you're going to move ahead.
Yeah, Kyle, I think that you have a great perspective on that topic. I grew up with Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and I'm an old millennial. So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to connect with different generations pretty seamlessly. I understand where millennials are coming from. I understand where Gen Zers are coming from, but I also understand where boomers are coming from. I understand where Gen Xers are coming from. And I've interviewed people of all ages over the years on my podcast. I've had guests who range from people of, literally all ages. I have an episode coming out in May with one of the most successful Olympic athletes in the world, who's in his early 20s. And I've interviewed people in their 60s and possibly even 70s. I don't ask how old my guests are. No one wants to be asked how old they are. But
Shoot,
At
I
the end
don't
of
even
the
care anymore.
But one of my guests told me something really interesting. A retired general. The episode hasn't been released yet, but it's coming out in the spring. It's with a retired Air Force general, Tom Trask, who's a tremendous guy, a really, really phenomenal guy. And he's told me this off the air when we hung out, is how much he admires millennials. And Tom Trask is not a millennial, he's a retired 3-star general. And he went into it in detail on my show on why he believes millennials are the reason why the United States military is the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. And I think it's a matter of respecting each other, respecting our differences, and embracing each other and embracing what each and every one of us brings to the table, even when that person is bringing something different than what you bring. I would argue, especially when that person brings something different.
Well, I don't have a good excuse for why I dropped out of college. I mean, I did raise a family, working full time, but if I'd had the drive like I should have at that early age, I would have gone on and finished college. But then my kids come along, and honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of hope for this generation, but I'm seeing kids that are my children's age that are starting to take an initiative and getting into school and doing the things in this life that they want to do, which it's surprising to me, to be honest with you, because I'm like you say, I didn't have a whole lot of hope for the newer generation coming up, but some of them are actually surprising me.
I think that every generation has a tendency to almost instinctively look down on the next generation and say, oh, well, in the old days, we used to do this and we used to do that, and we had to walk 10 miles to school and shovel through snow. But at the end of the day, as General Trask told me and told my audience, and look at what our generation, my generation, has done answering the call when we got attacked on 9/11. I didn't. I was in college. I was a freshman at USC during 9/11. I was studying and trying to prepare for my career. But a lot of people my age were incredibly honorably stopping whatever they were doing and volunteering their lives for our country, serving overseas, serving in Afghanistan, and then serving in Iraq.
Yes.
And look at what's happening today. Look at all of the first responders serving in our hospitals, nurses, doctors, and they're all ages. They're my age, they're your age, they're older, they're younger. They're people who are called to serve. We should all be called to serve in some way, in some form, in some fashion. Through my work, I really try to make an impact in the lives of others. Through my podcast, through my writing, through my speaking, even through my businesses, I really take a lot of pleasure and joy in being able to bring comfort to other people's lives through the products that we provide. Our office chairs physically bring joy and comfort to countless people across the country. And as an entrepreneur, that's something that brings me a lot of satisfaction. Through my podcast, being able to make accessible the best advice possible of the best network of mentors possible is something that brings me a lot of satisfaction. This is my way of doing it. But I think everyone has to dig deep and figure out how can each one of us contribute in our own way? How can each one of us make a difference? And by no means is what I'm doing any better than what the next person is doing. I would argue that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people out there doing far more impactful work than what I'm doing. Certainly the people on the front lines of the hospitals are doing way more important work than what I'm doing, sitting back on my Herman Miller chair and recording a podcast. But I think everyone needs to dig deep and figure out how we can contribute in our own ways.
Well, that that's an understatement. Yes, you definitely need to see what you, because this is also like we go back. You try to teach what you can to the people that are coming up behind you, because it's going to be beneficial to you in your future. This is going to be a day that I can't work anymore. Well, who's going to be taking care of me? And I told my daughter, since she's in law enforcement, that she better save up her money so she can take care of dear old dad when I'm too old.
Kyle, I think you have many good years, many, many, many good years ahead of you. So I wouldn't worry too much.
Well, I'm working on it. Now, one thing I can say about the older generation, their music does suck, man.
Really?
Yeah, the younger generation, their music sucks. I'm sorry.
The younger
It just doesn't.
generation. I thought you
Yeah,
said the
I'm
older
sorry.
generation.
No, I'm sorry. My bad. I meant
Okay.
the younger generation. Our music was awesome. Theirs sucks,
I'm,
man.
I'm a classic rock fan. I like classic
Yes.
rock. So, Kyle, you're not going to hear me push back on that.
Now, also, I wanted to talk to you about building that winning culture. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, love talking about how leaders can build winning organizational cultures. And it really starts with bringing in the right people. When you work for a huge company, and I don't know who's listening, how many listeners are nodding their heads saying, yeah, I've worked for this massive company. I know I personally have worked for some really big companies. When you work for a huge company, if you hire the wrong person, it's bad, it's disruptive, but it's not catastrophic. When you're in an entrepreneurial company, when you're in a small business, when you're in a early stage business, and you hire one bad person, that can completely blow up your culture. That can completely destroy your company culture. When you hire a great person, that can elevate your culture. That can completely enhance your culture. When leaders think about building a winning culture, oftentimes we think about the external trappings. We think about bringing in a pool table or a ping pong table or beer on tap or kombucha or having masseuse or this or that. Yeah, all that stuff is cool and great, but at the end of the day, your culture is defined by your people,
Definitely.
and you need to have people who you want to be around and who your people want to be around. So as a leader, you need to be extremely careful about who you hire, and you need to prioritize each and every hire and focus less on the, call it, traditional markings of what companies tend to look for in candidates. So, did they go to Harvard? Did they graduate with a 4.0? Did they work for Goldman Sachs? Instead, focus on who they are as a person.
Definitely.
What is their work ethic like? What are their values? What is their attitude? How do they fit within your own unique company? My company culture is very different than a lot of the company cultures that I've had experience working in. And someone who will fit in and thrive in my company might not fit in and thrive in some of the companies that I work for, and vice versa. And we need to be really mindful of all of those things, because at the end of the day, your people are your culture.
For sure, but I will say I had a very small part in getting people hired on with the city. I did get to sit in on the interviews and kind of got a feel for who they were. And then there was a lot of times I was like, I don't know if this guy's going to work out. And they hired him anyway. We got him in there, and it seemed like they were just totally lost. But instead of just giving up on them altogether, I try to kind of take them under my wing and then also surround them with people that were willing to help them. You know, and some people thrive after that because, I mean, just like when you were learning to tie your shoes as a kid, you didn't get it right the first time. You didn't. It took you 20 times to get it right, but you had somebody to show you how to do it, and eventually now it comes second nature. And so, it makes me feel like I've accomplished something when I've brought somebody in and have gave them that confidence to do better. But then, like you say, sometimes there's just people that just don't fit in at all. They don't care to learn. They're just there for a paycheck.
Kyle, I really love everything you said, and I think that you just illustrated the importance of mentorship. And it's a big reason why I've been so committed to the concept behind my podcast, 30-Minute Mentors. I am a very big beneficiary of mentorship. I've had great mentors in my life, and there's no way that I would enjoy whatever level of success I have today without the guidance and mentorship that I've had from a very young age. And Kyle, you, I think, should be commended for the great mentorship that you've provided to the people who you've worked with. And it sounds like it's just kind of second nature to you. But when you mentor others and when you provide others with your unique sets of experiences and the wisdom and advice that you could share with them, it makes a very big difference in the way that they can ultimately grow into the work that they do and ultimately become more successful in their lives and in their careers. So really appreciate what you said and shared.
Well, when they do well, it makes me look good.
Yeah. Well,
maybe it's selfish in a way.
We're all in this together.
Oh,
we're all in this together. I mean, it's a team game. It's a team sport.
We all started somewhere.
Business is a team sport. Life is a team sport. And we all need to remember that it's not purely about me. It's about we.
Exactly.
And when you're focused on helping other people and when you're mentoring other people, you're going to make things better. And when things are better for everyone, they'll be better for you too.
Well, like the sports analogy we were talking about earlier, you may have the best player that's ever played the game on your team, but if he's not helping out the others on the team, making them better, okay, you might have the best stats that there ever was, but if your team's not making it to the championship, what's the point?
Completely. It's a team sport.
And I also would like to kind of focus in a little bit more about the entrepreneurship and building on your brand. Now, where can you start with that?
Sure. Kyle, we could spend an entire episode on this. I mean,
hey, if we got to come back, we'll come back.
But this is good stuff. To try to give a couple of good snippets. On the topic of building your own brand, I think it's really important to take the time to understand what is it that you're good at? What is it that you excel at? What is it that you do that the people around you don't necessarily do? What is it about you that makes you different, that makes you unique, that makes you special? And when you're taking the time to do the level of self-reflection that's needed to truly understand who you are as a person, you will walk away from that exercise far more capable, far better equipped at being able to brand yourself effectively. When it comes to personal branding, you need to recognize that your brand has to be authentic. Your brand has to be consistent. Your brand has to be grounded in reality. Your brand has to be backed up with evidence. And your brand has to be something that you live and breathe. And your brand has to be focused. It can't be scattered. So that's really why I highly recommend taking the time to truly understand who are you and what is it about you that makes you different, and then focus your brand, focus your strategy, focus the way that you position yourself around that.
Okay. Well, I'm a 50-year-old teenager, so if that tells you anything.
I love it, Kyle. I love
Okay.
it.
Now, something that was brought up to me was, and I need to learn this balance and how I actually go about doing it, because I am Mr. Nice Guy. I,
You
I
seem like a really nice guy, Kyle. I mean, you've been really nice to me. I
well,
appreciate it.
a lot of times I've been told I'm a little too nice, and I need that balance between being a boss and being Mr. Nice Guy. Where do you actually draw that line?
Yeah, really good one, Kyle. I think it starts with recognizing that when you're in the workplace, your job isn't to become everyone's best friend. Now, it's important to build relationships with the people around you. It's important to build trust. It's important to build rapport, to build camaraderie. Those are all extremely important things. But you need to be mindful of the end game. You need to be mindful of your goals and your organization's goals. And your goals as a leader are not necessarily your goals as a friend. Your goals as a leader are very clear, and they're indexed to your company's performance. You can't lose sight of that. So, as nice a guy as you may be, you have to always remember that you have a job to do, and you have responsibilities, and you have a fiduciary duty to your company. And if it requires you being the bad guy, if it requires you having to play bad cop, you got to play bad cop. But I am much more like you, Kyle. I'm the nice guy. Sometimes it's helpful when you have people around you who compliment you and are the bad guys. But if you want to try to figure out how to start, I would say start by remembering that your job isn't necessarily to be everyone's friend. Your job isn't necessarily to be loved by everyone. If you act in the best way possible, if you act to the best of your abilities, you probably will be loved. So just do the right thing and don't worry so much about consequences.
Do you think that in this world that we're in now, and of course the generations that, you know, before me coming up, how important do you feel about morality in companies instead of just making it, you know, the $1 billion company? Would you rather have a $1 million company and have the morals, or the $1 billion company?
I don't think it's an either or. And it's a question that I actually ask a lot of leaders on my podcast. And the way that I frame it is I'll ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is ethics to leadership? And anytime I ask it, the answer is 10. And it's backed up with clear and concrete examples as to why. And I believe that very firmly as well. I think that there are exceptions to the rule. There are clearly unethical leaders who you can look at as examples of people who have been able to make a lot of money in unadmirable ways. Those are not people who I look up to. Those are not people who I certainly don't bring them onto my show, and I certainly don't think that we should aspire to follow in their footsteps. I think it's much more important to do the right thing, to follow your North Star and have that North Star be a North Star grounded and rooted in morality. I think that it's important for every leader to have a guiding set of principles that he or she follows, that above all, don't look, at the end of the day, we can make decisions that feel good in the moment. And we can try to win the day, we could try to win the battle, but to really win the war, to really make long-term strategic decisions, to make moves that are going to be beneficial to everyone in the long term, you have to do things the right way. You have to act in a way that is going to be right. Do the right thing. I didn't come up with that line. Did Spike Lee come up with the line, do the right thing, or was it just a movie? Great movie, by the way.
Right.
I loved it.
It's just something I feel should be embedded in everyone. I want our podcast network to be a success, but at the same time, I don't want to compromise our morality. And don't. Let me try to explain this. We have a comedy show, and every other word's cuss word, but there's also disclaimers to that. Again, that's just the way their show is. That's their comedy.
Sure.
Myself, I don't care how much I'm joking around with people. I try to not let any curse words come out because that's just the person that I am. Do you think that I'm compromising that morality by letting them do their show that they want to do their show? Or, I mean, I don't even know how to elaborate
I understand your
on
question. I'm not, by no means am I the moral arbiter. So I think it's important not to try to play God, and it's important not to try to put yourself above others. So I'm happy to provide judgment and provide my best thoughts and guidance, but I don't think that I have any kind of moral authority over anyone else. On this particular topic, I think you're doing the right thing. I think that at the end of the day, you're giving them a platform it's a comedy show. Sounds like their humor is good natured, and look, if they're using bad words, I personally don't care. Like, I use my fair share of profanity, not often, not all the time, but I do. I mean, we all do. Maybe you don't, Kyle, but I do.
Usually behind closed doors, but
yeah. We all. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with profanity, and I don't have a problem with comedians using profanity. I have a problem with mean-spirited humor, and I think that as long as it's not mean-spirited, then I'm all for it.
That's kind of the way that I've thought about it. I don't want to stifle anybody's creativity, but at the same time, I refuse to let any kind of hate,
yes,
bigotry, any of that
Yeah.
stuff come in. I mean, if he wants to make fun of me because I'm a white boy, I got no problem with that. I don't take offense to it.
if it's coming from a good place, like
It
I've
is. It
always,
is.
yeah, I've always had the view that when you're joking around with your friends, you could punch as hard and elbow as hard, and because they're your friends, and at the end of the day, it's all coming from a good place. And if one of my friends takes a shot at me, I'm gonna laugh because it's usually really funny. So why wouldn't I laugh?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to be respectful and cognizant of the fact that when humor is not coming from a good place, you do sometimes need to step in and say, hey, that's not okay. It's not okay. Never okay to be racist. It's never okay to be sexist. It's never okay to be discriminatory. And I appreciate that you feel the same way. I think that that's very important.
Well, and I usually try to steer away from any kind of politics or religion, anything like that. But do you feel, and this is how I feel, do you feel like it's probably best to leave all the politics out of it altogether?
I try to leave it out of my professional work. I have very strong political views. I
Myself.
have very, anyone who knows me knows what my political views are. I'm not shy about them. Yeah, I mean, it's very open about how I vote, who I vote for, what I believe, and I believe it very strongly. But definitely separate it from my work. And I have friends on both sides of the political aisle. I have friends with very differing political viewpoints, certainly viewpoints that are very different than mine. I've had guests in my interview series who have political perspectives very different than mine. I actually, in my interview series in Thrive Global, I did an interview with a retired general, and we were chatting off air, off the record. And one of the things we started talking about politics because my work isn't about politics, but we were just kind of started getting into it. And he and I had just polar opposite views. And we were talking about the Mueller report, and I had one perspective, and he had a very different perspective. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, he said, "Well, you know, this is what makes it great is that we could have respectful, thoughtful conversations and still be friends." So that's how I try to approach life.
Well, I hear you. I mean, yes, I am very strong in my beliefs, and honestly, I used to put out all kinds of posts and thing on my personal Facebook, and I've spent the last few days just going back years and just deleting all of it because I'm like, you know what, I don't have anything to do with that anymore. I'm gonna believe what I want to believe. Everybody
Sure,
believe what they want to believe. I
sure.
just I feel like when you bring it into your business or
Yeah.
even if you're in entertainment and you bring it up, you're isolating your audience.
I don't, you know, Kyle, I don't judge other people. I think that everyone has to make their own personal decision. So if another entrepreneur wants to take a very open stand, and if an entertainer wants to make politics a core component of the way he or she, you know, I don't make any judgments about how other people react. I just can tell you how I approach it, and I'm very focused in my work on trying to improve as many people's lives as I can, whether it's through the products I'm selling, whether it's through the content that I'm creating, my writing, my speaking. My job isn't to alienate people. My job isn't to pick this group versus that group. Now, if someone asks me what my views are, or someone wants to have a conversation with me about politics, about world affairs, I don't shy away from it. I have a degree in political science. I'm very engaged. I'm very passionate about politics. It's an area that I love talking about it. I love having conversations about it, but I try to separate it from this component of what I do.
As well, I think it should be. That's my opinion on it as well. I just don't think it needs to be a reason behind any of what we're trying to do. If I had a political podcast and that's what they want to talk about, fine. That's what you talk about. But I don't even think I want that a part of the network.
Yeah, I make no. I'm a big believer, Kyle, in sort of living your life, and I try to provide my perspectives, but I also really believe in the importance of not being judgmental toward others and really just kind of live and let live. And I live my life. I don't really want other people telling me how to live, and I don't really feel like it's my place to tell other people how to live.
Exactly.
All I can do is I can tell other people here are some best practices on how to become a better leader, but I'm not going to tell people this is how you should live your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not prejudiced because some of my best friends are Houston Texans fans. So, did I say that out loud? No, we joke about that. But man, this has been awesome. So when do your shows come on? Pre-recorded? You release them at a certain time?
Yeah, so I record them and then I release them every Tuesday at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I highly encourage anyone interested in the content, anyone interested in becoming a better leader, anyone interested in becoming more successful in their lives and their careers, anyone interested in listening to and learning from the most successful people in the country, founders, CEOs, generals, admirals, celebrities, athletes. I try to make those 30 minutes as impactful and powerful as possible.
Because I'm telling you, just a little bit that you've told me, and it's been very general. There's so much that I could learn from you, and I think that we all should be tuning in. So, what platforms are you on?
So you can find me on my website. 30 Minute Mentors is the name of the show. So you can go to 30minutementors.com. It's all spelled out. So you just punch in 30minutementors.com. You could also find me on your favorite podcasting platform, whatever that is, however you're listening to this show, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or Google Play. Just type out 30 Minute Mentors and subscribe, listen, and I hope you enjoy.
Are you on YouTube as well?
I'm not on YouTube because at the end of the day, who wants to look at me?
Hey, if they'll look at me, they'll look at anybody. And on social media?
Social media, you could find me very easily. It's just my name, Adam Mendler. So you can find me at Adam Mendler. That's at Adam Mendler on Instagram, at Adam Mendler on Twitter. You could also go to my website, which is adammendler.com.
Well, I would love to share all that on our social media so everybody can find you, and I'll be glad to promote your show because
Thank you.
when I run across people like you, I think you deserve it.
I really appreciate it.
I love the fact that you're so willing to help others. I learned something from a mentor of mine that you go out and you help other people. You not necessarily are going out there to make any money off of them. You give them free advice, or you give them that first little bit for free, and the next thing you know, it's coming back to you sometimes 100-fold, because you don't know exactly where that's going. So, listening to your podcast, I'm sure people are going to get that. You're going to be, building businesses out there you may never even see, but you're bettering this country and the people that are listening to you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate your support.
And in the future, I'd love to have you back on the show again. We could focus
Anytime. This was so much fun. This was really a pleasure.
We can focus on just one subject maybe next time.
Sounds good.
I'll be taking your whole show over.
This is a pleasure.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and everyone that's been listening or you're watching on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I have, and I will be promoting this guy about the best that I can. And thank y'all for joining. Stay tuned. We've got other people that are coming up I'm sure you're going to enjoy as well. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network and on Instagram at The Vibes Broadcast.